Salam. Please silence all your devices, inshallah, and be mindful that there are two cameras back there in our lives.
That's what we do. That's how we recognize each other. Right. Let's come to some check with next week. So maybe next week. Let's give it to you. Check the copy. Right.
Assalamu alaikum. Get started here. These sides of the West. Please. All line. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Wa alaikum salam.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Hayya ala salam. حي على السلام حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور انفسنا ومن سيئات اعمالنا واشهد ان لا اله الا الله وحده لا شريك له واشهد ان محمدا عبده ورسوله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Brothers and sisters, before getting into the theme of the Qur'an today, that we remember our brothers and sisters throughout this ummah, suffering, whether you know the cause of its suffering or not. And I want us to remember an event that happened in 2002. And this was the event of 779 prisoners being incarcerated in Guantanamo Bay. Guantanamo Bay is a naval base that is owned and operated by the United States of America on the island of Cuba. And the reports that came out and continue to come out of this incarceration, now there are only, I think, 29 people who were incarcerated in this camp, this U.S.-run camp. It is one of the worst sites for prisoners, incarcerated people anywhere in the world. It is disgraceful by any measure, by any standard of punishment, what has happened to the individuals who were incarcerated in Guantanamo Bay and continue to be incarcerated there. Just give just a couple of quick examples. The overwhelming majority of those persons who were incarcerated there, all of them were Muslim. The overwhelming majority had nothing to do with the attack on 9/11. As a matter of fact, just recently, in maybe the last year, two brothers who were cab drivers in Pakistan, Rabbani brothers, were snatched up and put in Guantanamo Bay and tortured for a very extended period, an extended number of years. And this is the story, unthinkable kinds of torture. But this base still open. And there have been movements across this country and around the world that the United States should close this base. And I ask that we remember those who have had the misfortune, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has called them to be incarcerated there in the past and those who are still there. Let us remember in our Qur'ans today the Muslims on the subcontinent of India who continue to suffer a slow unfolding genocide, while the Prime Minister of India, Modi, travels into the United States and around the world and gets such a warm greeting while he is the master, he is the general who's overseeing a genocide in India today. Brothers and sisters, let us remember our brothers and sisters on the island of Cuba, who have embraced Islam. They are a minority population there. And in spite of the ideological bent of the government there, a growing Muslim population is coming about, even as we see this in small areas like the country of Haiti. Let us remember our brothers and sisters who are, in spite of all opposition, becoming Muslim today. Let us remember our brothers and sisters who are suffering any kind of discomfort and ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala relieve that suffering. Brothers and sisters, I won't take much of your time today, but I want to just take a little bit of time to discuss something that is very critical for us to understand, to know whether or not we have a perspective on this deen al haq, the one that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen for all mankind. Whether or not our perspective as we go through our day-to-day lives, whether we are looking at what we're going through and experiencing as an opportunity to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to remind ourselves no matter what the struggle may be, no matter what the hardship may be, that is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala challenges us on a day-to-day basis, sometimes with extreme kinds of hardships, that we have to just reflect and ask, even as the Sahaba of the Prophet Muhammad would ask themselves when they were on the battlefield and they find themselves in situations that seem to be not able to overcome. And they're asking, when will come the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in every circumstance when you and I individually or collectively are going through hardships? This response from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to those Sahaba and anyone who calls out to him that his help is always near. That you're not alone, you're not being unseen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you're going through difficulties, when you're going through hardships. Brothers and sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Qur'an, and you're more familiar with this idea, with this ayat than I am. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam what is contained in the Qur'an. Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَادٍ. That verily we have created man in toil and struggle. That the creator of all of us is declaring in this Quran that yes, we are here to struggle. This is not some kind of vacation in Disneyland or Disney World somewhere where this life that we're living, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us for a struggle in this world. It's not about just getting everything that our hearts desire. It's not going to be about getting things so easily that from the time that we are conceived, there's a struggle that's going on that's unseen. From the time that we come and birth into this world, there's a struggle. That there's a very thin line between whether that baby, that newborn is going to die or whether that baby is going to live. It's in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's never a time when we're on this earth. And as I said, even at birth, there's never a time that we are not required to struggle feasibility. There's never a moment in our lives when we're not tested by something. And if, in fact, you and I are to get the benefit of these tests, of these struggles, we have to remember that what we are struggling for is that meeting that we have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That what we want to struggle for has to be kept in the context of understanding that I can fail my tests in this world. I can be unsuccessful at any given time. But I know that how I deal with the struggles of this world are going to determine what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does with us as individuals in this world and in the next. Brothers and sisters, the Prophet Muhammad was reported to have said that the example of the believer is like a fresh, tender plant. From whichever way the wind blows, it bends in that direction. But when the wind becomes quiet, it comes back straight up again. The same is with the believers, with calamities, with struggles, until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removes its difficulties. Brothers and sisters, this is such a beautiful comparison, a beautiful analogy of a plant that when the strong wind comes, it bends, it may touch the ground, bending so much. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills, that wind calms down, the plant comes back. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us this example to understand that we as believers, we are like that plant if we understand our deen. That calamities are going to come, it's going to make us feel like we're burdened so much that we're going to break. But it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who decides when that relief comes, and then we should come right back to the period, to the point that we were before the hardship. Brothers and sisters, when we look in the history of Islam through the lens that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have us look, not as Orientalists, not as Islamophobes, but look at it through the lens of those that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has gifted with this beautiful religion of Islam. And when we look at first at this seerah, look at the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu. Look at the lives of those who surrounded the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu, that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu said will be the best generation of Muslims that will ever come. There'll never be a generation. This hadith, this understanding does not mean that there won't be those of you who will excel in their practice of Islam, who withstand tests and not be broken, will understand that whatever we're confronted with is to bring us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if we're patient. Look at the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that every Muslim, that if we don't know about the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how can we even think that we can be a good Muslim? How can we understand Islam if we don't know the hardships that the Prophet Muhammad went through? If we don't know what those Sahaba who were with the Prophet Muhammad went through even to get to Islam? Brothers and sisters, we talk often in discussions when we're talking about the diversity of the Ummah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu. We talk about there was this brother, there was this sister who were not from the Qur'an, they were not originally from the Arabian Peninsula, but they all came together to develop this strong movement for the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look at the story, and I'm just a thumbnail view of it. Look at the story of the life of Salman al-Farsi. Salman the Persian, whose father was a Zoroastrian, a fire worshiper priest. That Salman knew that in his heart, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put it in his heart that this can't be what faith and belief is all about. So he had to escape from his father, Salman, and just trying to get, and as I say, in the interest of time, I'll just give a brief version of it, and trying to get to where he heard that there was a prophet who was in Mecca, in this area. And so in Medina, it was in Medina, there was a prophet in Medina. And so Salman started this journey, and he ended up getting captured and caught and put into slavery. And Salman heard one day while he was working, and some stories said that he was up in a tree. He was pruning some fruit up in a tree. And he heard some people down on the ground talking about that prophet over there. He didn't go to Medina deliberately. He didn't know where to go. But as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's father was, he was captured and brought as a slave into Medina. And so he heard the people on the ground talking about this man, Muhammad, and how people were being divided up and everything. So he said, yeah, that's where I want to be. Look at the story of those who struggled like Salman just to get to be submissive to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through Islam. Look at the first martyrs of Islam. A married couple, an elderly man and his wife, the first martyr of Islam willing to sacrifice her life, and all she had to do was say, no, I'm not following Muhammad. No, I'm not walking away from all of the gods that you worship. All she had to do was just renounce her faith. But what did Sumaya do? Sumaya said that it didn't matter what you do to me. It doesn't matter that I have a husband and have children. It doesn't matter. I'm worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and she became the first martyr for Islam. Her husband Yasser followed right behind her in martyrdom. This was a degree, a level of sacrifice that first generation of Muslims, and so many after that, have been willing to endure, knowing that this is just a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's just like in a classroom. No matter how hard the test may be, pass the test and go to the next level. This is the standard that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us to look at our own practice of Islam. I want to just share one other from the time of the Prophet Muhammad, but from the time of just a couple of decades after the time of the Prophet Muhammad, during the caliphate of the Abbasids. This was the caliphate after the Umayyads, and then came the Abbasids. And during this particular time, there was an Islamic scholar by the name of Ahmed ibn Hanbal. That everybody around Imam Ahmed recognized his level of scholarship and recognized his commitment to this deen of Haqq. Ahmed ibn Hanbal, and we can interpret it one way or another. Either he was unfortunate enough or he was fortunate enough to live during a time when the Muslims, under the leadership of this particular caliphate, were saying that the Qur'an is created like any other book, that this is not the Kalamullah, this is not the word of Allah, it's Allah's thoughts made, but it is created. This is not an eternal book, it's a book that was created. And so the Caliph at the time started lining up the scholars, the recognized scholars, and bringing them in and asking them, what do you think, whether the Qur'an was created or not? And the overwhelming majority of these scholars, and they were kind of waiting. Let's get these people who don't have the level of recognition because of their scholarship of Imam Ahmed. Let's bring them in first. And then they brought Imam Ahmed in and say, check this person and check that person, and went down a line declaring those who would endorse this heretical idea. And Imam Ahmed made it very clear that, I'm sorry, they are in error. He didn't talk bad about them. He just said, no, they are in error. He gave his dalil. He said that quoting so many ayahs, that this is the words of Allah. It's not a created thing like some book that you can pull off of a shelf. What happened to Imam Ahmed, who in the was recognized as the most, as far as Islam is concerned, around. He was first put into a dungeon. He was beaten unmercifully in this dungeon. He was tortured, beaten with sticks. He was hung up with his hands held up above him and pulled off of the ground by his arms. Every kind of torture that you can imagine. He was in a filthy area where he couldn't avoid even his own body fluids because it had him cramped in an area that was so small and cramped. And he endured this kind of torture for years. And the history tells us that the Caliph was saying, go bring Ahmed back to me. And this went on for a number of different times, and every time Imam Ahmed gave the same response, that particular Caliph died. Another Caliph came in and did the same thing. Then he died. And then Imam Ahmed after the sanity had come back to the leadership of the Muslims, Imam Ahmed now was left free. That here is a man who was known as one of the most knowledgeable human beings on earth at that time about Islam. He had this long, outstanding track record for how he served the Muslims. And he was tortured, unbelievably tortured, because he believed that this book of the Qur'an was not a created thing, even though the government was pushing this bad idea and forcing the Muslims to declare this as the belief of Islam. ربنا اتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. Oh Allah, give us the best of this world, the best of the next, and save us from the fire. Brothers and sisters, when we study the Qur'an, when we study the seerah, the life of the Prophet Muhammad, it becomes very, very clear that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has preserved a roadmap for all of us, even those of us living in the United States over 1,400 years after the life of the Prophet Muhammad, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has preserved this Qur'an and preserved the prophetic example of the Prophet Muhammad so that you and I have no excuse to put it in our head that I'm going through a difficult period, that I'm going through a time where I don't have enough money to pay my bills. Yes, it's rough, it's a hardship. This is a difficult time that I'm going through. But when you ask, I ask myself, the struggles that I'm going through, how many have an origin in trying to make supreme the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Am I struggling feasibility law? Is my struggle on a day-to-day basis? Is it of Islam? Am I losing a job because I refuse to change my dress? If I'm a sister on a job, and I have a good job, but they're telling me I can't dress in the way that I'm commanded to dress. Do I say, well, I got to work, so I must take this off? This is just a test, it'll pass. Our brothers, knowing that out of all of the salat that we are commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and shown and given guidance by the Prophet Muhammad that we are commanded to make 5 a day, every day, but there's only one. Out of all of these prayers that we are commanded to stop what we're doing on the day of Jumah and go to the mosque. Allah is so merciful, is He going to shorten prayers, not like Salat al-Dhuhr. It's only 2 rakats. It gives us the opportunity to see one another that we may not see one another during the week. But more importantly, it's following a command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that's in the Qur'an. It's telling us that when that prayer is made for Salat al-Jumah, stop what you're doing and go to the mosque. And so am I challenged in such a way that my job says, no, you can't do it. You know, I'll share this, and I'm not using myself as an example, because a lot of folks have told me that a lot of things I've done are really crazy, and I believe in with them. But I have been blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to understand the importance of Salat al-Jumah. That may be the only thing I understand. And from the time that I took Shahada up until this day, no job, no preoccupation has stopped me from wherever I am making Salat al-Jumah. So that's one thing, out of so many things I get wrong. But at least I understand, and I'm only saying this to encourage you for your brothers in particular who are not coming to Salat al-Jumah, who are not even asking to get off work. Talk to them. Our struggles, the greater that they are, they come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is an easy hurdle to overcome without coming to Jumah. It's an easy hurdle to bring your children who are in the public schools in this county. It's an easy hurdle to overcome this. We fought this battle with the school system years ago. All you have to do, if you want your, especially male children, but your girls as well, to follow this particular mandate from Allah, all you have to do is just give a letter or talk to the principal. All I'm saying, the point that I'm trying to make, that the struggles that you and I sometimes look at as, wow, this is heavy, this is deep. On the scale of things, they are very minor. They're so easy to overcome. And the Prophet Muhammad has made it clear that if Allah, when Allah wants to reward his servants, he or she difficult tasks to do. He gives us difficult tests. If paradise, if Jannah, was not the best reward that a human being can even imagine. We can't even imagine the rewards that are waiting for us if we take this deen seriously and don't make excuses for why we are not doing the things that we know we should be doing. And then when we're tested, we think it's the worst possible thing that has ever happened to us. Oh Lord, why are you testing me like this? Maybe it's because Allah, the Prophet Muhammad says that when Allah will show favor to any of his servants, he'll give that servant a difficult test. If we only knew, and I'm not claiming I know anything, I'm just saying all of us, if we only knew and valued what's waiting for us in the afterworld, what's waiting for us on that day when we return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we're standing there before Allah. And we're so scared. Now it's become real, but it's too late now. It's too late. It's become so real that the Prophet has made it clear that some folks will be standing with their own perspiration up to their ears, the earlobes, because of the fear at that moment that everything that I was told, everything I read in the Qur'an, now is become true. It's real. So let us not wait until this moment when there's nothing else we can do. We can't say, oh Allah, send me back for just one more day. I'll promise I'll do everything I'm supposed to do. We can't wait. So take advantage. As I say this, I'm reminding myself and reminding you, take advantage of every moment that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us to recognize that we're being tested, to use Islamic solutions for these tests, and beg Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for his mercy. Oh Allah, give us an understanding of this deen that is useful for us in this world and in the next. Oh Allah, strengthen our determination to do that which is pleasing to you and that only. And oh Allah, make not this ummah Prophet Muhammad an object of test of the disbelieving people.